And then, Team and Batanji, Sonju Jalan, the Joris, Yella, and then Consul Sonju Jasan, Team member Sonju Jalan, the Joris, then on Sonju San, Lam de Cheva, Chepa Chepati, Yella, and then Jimmy Lam de Joris, Tigino, Chepa Chepati, Yella, number Yellow, Sanam, So Saba, Digpa Shaba, and Handel, Torman Jimba. Control children, Torma, Sanam, so Saba, the Husamai.
From among the instructions on the 7 points of mind training which deal with the bringing on to the path of adverse circumstances, we have heard that there are 3 ways of going about this. There is the giving rise and nurturing of bodhicitta, or the enlightened attitude, as it is in accord with the world of appearances and phenomena. There is the giving rise and nurturing of equally such bodhicitta in accord with the world of with true reality. And then there are the particular instructions of how to truly go about this, the various kinds of activities that are to be performed. From among these explanations, we have then heard that there are 4, we find ourselves now in the 3rd of these, and we have heard that there are 4 applications which are to be brought to bear. The first of them is the strengthening and increasing of the 2 stocks of merit, that of merit itself and that of wisdom or primordial awareness. The second of these is the confession of one's own misdeeds. The third is giving gifts to the gods, demons and spirits, etc. And the fourth of them is the presentation of Tormas and offerings to dakas, the kinis, protectors and guardians of the Dharma. From among these 4, we will now hear instructions about the second of them, the confession of misdeeds. So when we're talking about the confession of misdeeds, we first have to know what is meant by misdeeds. Misdeeds are all those deeds, all those unskillful deeds that we have performed under the influence of one or the other, or possibly a combination of all of these obscurations and emotional defilements, such as hatred, anger, desire, whatever. And all the deeds that we have allowed ourselves to do under the influence of these. Even if we were just to look at all the possibilities in this very life in which we find ourselves presently, if we were to look at how many times we have acted unskillfully instead of skillfully, how many times we have acted in negative ways instead of acting in a positive, skillful way, then already just for this lifetime, of course, there's an immense heap of negativity that we have accumulated. So that is only the accumulation of negativity that we have brought about in this lifetime. If we were to look at all our previous lifetimes, which are innumerable, which have been going on since time without beginning, then of course it goes without saying that the accumulation of all the negative deeds, of all the unskillful deeds and all the negativity that we have brought about with them is immense. It is like the highest of mountains, like the Mount Meru itself. Then on the other hand, the awakened one, the Buddha himself, having taught the profound methods of the so-called secret mantrayana or vajrayana, he has given us means which are so potent, which are so efficient, that we are enabled to purify even the worst of conceivably possibly conceivable negative deeds. Whatever negative thing we have done, there are methods to rectify them. There are methods for the purification of these. And this is what is usually known, what is commonly known under the heading of the four powers. Now, from among these four powers, what's the first one? The first one is that we start out by way of making it clear to ourselves of what kind of nature the deed that we have done is, and then giving rise to great regret, to great remorse about such a negative deed. That is the first of the four powers. The second from among these four powers is the resolve to never ever repeat such a negative deed again in the future. Having recognized what we have done, we resolve not to do it again, not to repeat it. So this is the second power, the power of resolve. The third power is that of giving rise to the visualization or imagining either the three jewels, the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, or one's own root teacher, or Tara, Avalokiteshvara, or one's own Yidam deity, to be truly present in front of ourselves, slightly above ourselves in space, and to then truly confess whatever misdeeds we have performed in the past. This is the third of these four powers, known as the power of the focal point. And then we come to the fourth from among these four powers, which is known as the power of the applied antidote. At this particular point, we then would apply such profound means, such as the repetition of the 100-syllable mantra of Vajrasattva, or the 6-syllable mantra of Avalokiteshvara, etc. By way of repeating these again and again, then our misdeeds will be purified. This is the application of the antidote, which is the fourth from among these four powers. Now, if we were endowed with these four powers, if we were to summarize them, to reiterate, the first power of remorse, the second power of resolve not to repeat the evil deed, the third power of focusing ourselves upon an appropriate witness and confessing our misdeeds, and the fourth of them, which is then the application of the antidote. If we were to be able to bring these four powers together, then it is said that even evil which is as large as the Mount Meru could be purified. In that regard, again, it is said that there are the so-called 6 doors, or one could also say the six kind of methods through which negativity may be purified. The first of these 6 doors of purification or methods of purification is the recitation, the utterance of the names of the Buddhas, such as we find in the Sutra of Purification, which starts out with the words, you great fully awakened Buddha, Amitabha, to you I go I pay homage to the fully awakened Buddha, Shobya, I pay homage, etc. The second of these 6 doors or methods of purification is to cause the creation of representations of the enlightened or awakened Buddha body, speech, or awareness. For instance, we could have a Buddha statue made, or we could have Dharma texts printed, or we could have a stupa built. The third method or door of purification or antidote is the presenting of offerings, be they flowers, be they fresh water, be they incense, whatever is at our disposal, to present these as offerings. The fourth door or method of purification would be the recitation of the appropriate kinds of sutra texts, and there are several which the Buddha himself has said are particularly efficient in order to confess misdeeds and rectify their consequences, such as the Sutra of Sutra of Confession, the Sutra of the 3 Heaps, the prayer or the aspiration of the Bodhisattva Samantabhadra, etc. There are a great many such texts which could be recited to that end. The fifth from among these 6 methods is the repetition of appropriate mantras, like for instance the 100-syllable mantra of Vajrasattva, but also the mantras of the Buddha Amitabha, the mantra of the Great Compassionate One, the mantra of the Medicine Buddha, etc. And the 6th of these methods or doors of purification are to train oneself in the practices of calm resting and of insight, those practices which are known as shamatha and vipassana or shine and lakto. This brings us to the third from among these 4 applications, which is the giving gifts or tormas to the god, demons, or spirits, or whatever one would like to call these forces. Again, as we have already heard, predominantly we start out by way of thinking that whatever force there might be that causes us harm, that causes us distress, pain, adverse circumstances of whatever sort, we think that this is simply the retribution for what we have done to them in the past. We think that because in the past I have acted equally towards you, I have caused you harm, pain, and distress, therefore I now undergo the suffering of retribution, I now undergo the suffering of you repaying me in kind. Therefore, I myself am the cause of the suffering that I'm experiencing at your hands, and therefore I now repay you in such a way as to make up for all the bad or the negative that I have done to you.
And sentient Tonglen, Dharma Dharma is and Jumbo Tonglen, training your somebody in your gun.
Furthermore, we then think that through whatever pain and suffering I do experience at your hands now, may the suffering and pain and the causes thereof of all beings come to ripen in this pain and suffering that I experience at the moment, and may this will be for the benefit and the welfare of all beings. And then we proceed to the fourth from among these four applications or methods, which is the presentation of Tormas and other offerings to the dakas, the kinis, protectors and guardians of the Dharma. As we then, together with the requisite practice and prayers, proceed to do so, we should do so also with the thought or with the prayer from the bottom of our hearts that through this activity of mine, through giving such offerings to you, etc., presenting you with such tormas, etc., may all adverse circumstances, in particular for Dharma practice, be eradicated, and on the other hand, may positive circumstances for the study and practice of Dharma be brought about. And then, of course, there are the many situations which may beset us suddenly, unexpectedly, seemingly out of nowhere. All of a sudden, we feel some pain, we feel some suffering, there are inexplicable mood swings which cause us distress, etc., and many more situations of this type. Also, these, of course, like all the other ones, have to be brought onto the path, have to be used as a skillful means upon that path. And concerning these, Chakava Yeshe Dorje says in yet another quote, all sudden and unexpected circumstances combine with the training. What training does he mean here? Of course, the training that he talks about is none other but the practice of sending and taking, the practice of the training of exchanging ourselves for others. So whenever we are beset by sudden, unpredictable, unexpected adverse circumstances, also, just like with any other adverse circumstances, we should think, may the suffering of such circumstances of all beings and the causes thereof come to ripen within myself. And similarly, we exchange all, taking all of this suffering and pain upon ourselves, we exchange it for all our joy and happiness. So we think, may all the joy and happiness and the causes thereof itself be dedicated, be given to the welfare of others. So in this way, when Chakava Yeshe Dorje says, combine such situations with the training, he talks about the training of sending, of taking, of the practice of Tonglen itself. And in Kafka Marang Gewa Dropa, Maruga Sana Sonchuga San Gom Toba, and in Yonglin Sabala, Zendu Yabojon, Tendawa Zambuga Yenti, Maranga Jongna, and Senkin Tangila, Maranga Zambu Yenti, Dele Hopa Jinge, Senkin Tangi, Zombuga Sawa. Then again, just as we often find ourselves under the influence of adverse and painful circumstances, we might occasionally find ourselves practicing virtue. We might occasionally find ourselves in a situation where we really learn and practice the Dharma. We might use such a situation in very much the same way, by way of thinking, may all beings, not a single one excluded, find the leisure to, just like me in this very moment, learn and practice the Dharma. May they be able to do so even more so than I do, and may they be able to derive great benefit thereof. And occasionally we might for once also experience happiness and joy. We might experience physical well-being instead of always complaining about our sufferings. Similarly, such a situation can be used in much the same way, by way of making this into a wish, by way of thinking, may all beings experience such well-being, may all beings experience such joy, such positive circumstances as I do in the moment. May they do so even more so, and again, may they derive great benefit thereof.
Dodon Zamba, Najer, Topa, Chadu, Topa, Lasso, Chimbo Naranga Sami, Yungu. Tendawa Yunga, Capsule, Narangi Pomari, Senjin Tangi, Senjila, Nandrava, Nonton Namba, Yam, Boto, Chimbo Yoji. Tendawa Senjin Tangi, Nonton Namba, Tangi, Naranga, Nonton Namba, Did, and the temperature, Melande.
But then in turn, we might find ourselves again under the influence of such obscurations or emotional defilements like pride, like anger, like desire, like jealousy, etc., with all the corresponding sufferings and ill feelings, etc., which go along with these. Then in turn, we might think, well, I'm not alone in this. There's a countless number of beings suffering from the very same, as do I. Therefore, may all the suffering of beings who find themselves under the influence of these defilements come to ripen within myself, so that they become completely free of these, that they become completely free of the causes of these, and that all of this may come to ripen within me. Then again, there might be situations in which we might be forced, unavoidably forced, to do something that we would very much like to avoid, yet we have no choice to do so. For instance, we might be house owners, that house might be full of small beings, of insects, for instance, which we are forced by whoever to exterminate. Or, for instance, we might be drafted into an army in order to participate in a war. Again, something that we could, in that situation, not avoid. Finding ourselves in such situations, there is, for once, that feeling of wanting to avoid this, and that feeling of opposition, not in the least because we are we know about these circumstances, and we know that having to perform such acts, having to do such deeds, then in the end some suffering or other will arise out of it for ourselves, not even thinking about the suffering that we cause for others at this time. And again, if we find ourselves in such a situation which could be unavoidable, where there would be no choice of ours whatsoever, we could think, well, I'm not alone in this. There are many other people, many other beings out there who find themselves in very much the same situation, or possibly even worse. Therefore, let me think, or let me pray that all the suffering that derives of such situations, of such unavoidable adverse circumstances, may come to ripen within myself, that others become free of the suffering which is being caused in such a way that they may become free of the causes thereof, and that they may in this way benefit from this. To summarize all of this, wherever and whenever in the course of the four activities of either eating or lying down or walking around or standing or sitting somewhere for that matter, wherever we found ourselves under the influence of such adverse circumstances, wherever we find ourselves under the influence of intense emotional defilements and all the confusion that goes with them, we could use all of these to bring them onto the path, to wish that the equal suffering of other beings may come to ripen within that which we experience ourselves at any given moment. As we have heard so far, the entire training of the 7 points of mind training is subdivided into 4 main headings, of which we have already heard some, of which we already have heard 3 of them. The first is the preliminary part, the second is the giving rise and nurturing of bodhicitta as such in the various ways which there are. The third is how to bring adverse circumstances which invariably appear in the course of such practice onto the path. Of these we have already heard some instructions. Then in the session tomorrow morning we will then hear first instructions on the 4th subheading, which deals with how we could possibly make such practice a practice for the entire length of our lives, how for the rest of our lives, if we were to adopt this practice as ours, how we could one-pointedly actually train ourselves in this. Tomorrow morning things will be as normal. There will first be a couple of interviews, and then there will be